before the game even started, Woj was on the ESPN broadcast for NBA Countdown, and he had a story that talked about, like, essentially, I'm just going to paraphrase it, of Phoenix being aware of Durant's frustrations and monitoring it. So if Woj is sharing that with us, you understand what I'm saying? That means there's probably more. That's how I read it. I don't know. I didn't talk to him about it or anything like that. But when I see something like that, I'd be like, why would this be a thing? And I don't know what that means. Like, at this point, Durant, this is what you wanted. You got your way, and you're there, and it's on you to fix it. And the other thing that Woj said that I thought was really interesting was the lack of supporting cast, the lack of assets moving forward, and the flexibility to do things. Dude, they traded all this stuff for you because you wanted to go there. And by the way, remember that report when it happened? Because it was just less than a year ago. I remember being in Arizona for the Super Bowl and Bill and I doing a big trade podcast. And part of that recap story, I think from Ramona Shelburne on ESPN, was that Durant wanted it to be a low-profile transaction that he didn't want to turn into a bidding war, which is even more insulting. Like, oh, you're demanding a trade with 4 years left on your contract. The extension's about to kick in. You wanted the general manager and coach with Brooklyn fired. You didn't get your way. You came back. Then Kyrie, the worst guy to ever hitch your wagon to in recent NBA history, decides he wants to bail. So then you want out too. But you don't want there to be a bidding process because you only want to go to one team. And Brooklyn, I think when we look back on it, you can say, hey, they did pretty well with that thing. So for Durant to be upset about the lack of assets, look in the mirror. And I have been a huge Durant fan. I've defended him at times when I think I always defended him because I was like, in a world of fake, I feel like he's always been real. And even if you don't like his version of real all the time, I'd rather have that than some of these other dudes where I don't even feel like I know them whatsoever. But that report was before the game. And then we got that kind of fourth quarter and overall effort from Durant where he's screwing up all over the place. And it's like, now you're going to be mad? Like, at least with the Beal thing, they didn't even give anything up, really, because he had the no trade clause and he ended up going to Phoenix. And even with Beal, I don't think Beal's somebody that all of a sudden it's like, okay, Beal's back. We're safe. Beal's here. Everything's good now. So I don't know about the standings. They're 11th now. They're actually out of the playoffs today. The stats, I said, are all kind of irrelevant until we get to see those three guys play together. The center stuff's probably been a little bit better. Nurkic didn't play yesterday, but Metu went nuts. And there's actually been, I think, a couple other bench pieces that make enough sense. Look, with Beal, Booker, and Durant all right, and the surrounding pieces, that should still be enough to be taken seriously as a playoff threat. And now, I don't know how anyone would take Durant seriously of like, what's the next move for him? It also leads to another thing that I think is really interesting with the new CBA stuff that we've all spent a lot of time on, what the unintended consequences would be. An example of that, you go back years ago where the max contract for an NBA player was 7 years for the home team, essentially. New team would be 6 years. If you were re-signing with your team, it was 7 years. And then the GMs, the owners are like, dude, these deals are so long. And if we get it wrong with one of these guys, then we're locked into it. And it was even worse then because the cap was lower. And you can get into the math percentage of the cap of what these deals actually were. But the unintended consequence basically turned into, well, hell, if I'm only signed for 4 years, you guys wanted these shorter deals. This is more player movement. That led to more player empowerment. And you had somebody maybe with a year left saying, I can get out of here. Then you had a guy with a year and a half left saying, I want to get out of here. And then we had guys like Ben Simmons and Durant saying, I want out of here as soon as the extension starts. When you're like, so if it were the old days, would today's NBA, somebody signs a 7-year extension and then goes, all right, I want out of here? And that's kind of where you're at with the mentality of some of the players. It's like, look, sign the paper. Don't worry about becoming a free agent and doing the one-and-ones where it's 1 year and a player option and then the opt-out to have this power and freedom like LeBron was doing, which some people followed his lead. Now it's just to sign the deal and then just force your way out. So when I look at the new CBA and some of the restrictions where they're significant, and Windhorst brought this up, like you look at the future trade market, how much is it going to change? And I don't know if the unintended consequence could lead to things that we've never seen before. Meaning, right now, if you want out, you just go, I want to go there. You're like, okay, so you want to trade, you have money left, but you only want to go to this one team. And then the player usually ends up getting his way. But the players are going to learn, whatever the next generation of players that have this kind of juice are going to say, well, hey, I want out of here. I have my contract, but I want to go there. You're going to go, well, with the new aprons and the new restrictions, I can't even send you there. And either there'll be confusion or they won't believe them, and then it'll have to be explained. And it's like, no, everybody used to just get their way. I now want to get my way. You're like, well, yeah, I don't think that's actually going to happen. Does that mean the players will give up? Does it mean there'll be less movement? Because I think that was one of the underlying things that was happening here with the league, where it's like, if you make it more restrictive financially, it should make the movement more restrictive as well. I just wonder if you could have a time where a player would be going, you know what? Just send me to the Pacers then. And I don't mean like specifically the Pacers, but I want out. All right, I want to go to LA. No, I want to go to Miami. You can't. I want to go to New York. Nope. You can't. They've all spent too much money. All right. What's the deal with Utah? What's their cap number? Let's do a little Celtics. They win in LA. Lakers hitting a weird stretch here. There's one stretch in the third quarter that I want to talk about. It's 58-57 at the half. Boston at that point is only 4-21 from threes. They'd gotten up big early in the game. Interesting to see Porzingis out there in this matchup, just because in the past Porzingis was thought to be somebody that could bring AD away from the rim defensively. There were some times that happened. I think the Lakers even switched the defensive assignment there for AD. AD was great yesterday. He was not the problem. But the problem is that the Lakers, the good news for the Lakers is the stuff that I saw in the third quarter is really fixable. But it's a bit like Phoenix. I mean, the Phoenix thing in the fourth quarter, I know I keep hammering it over and over again. It just was that ugly. But with the Lakers, there's just a lot of plays in there and be like, what are you guys doing? Like, these are just simple things. Like, just if you just get back on defense, you at least give yourself a chance. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to get defensive stop, but I can guarantee when you don't get back, it's going to be really easy for the other team to score. And it happened way too much in that third quarter. There was a play where Reddish lost Porzingis, just let him run behind him. Porzingis alley-oop dunk, often inbounds after an Anthony Davis turnover where the chair was kind of pulled from him and he fell on the baseline. If you remember that, underneath the hoop was a turnover. Drew has a wide open three. I don't know if that was on LeBron, because I think LeBron was actually trying to play defense towards the rim with somebody else from the Celtics lingering there, but nobody was back. They just couldn't figure out how to get their matchup so many times in transition. But that's not even in transition. That's often inbounds, and you're already that scattered defensively. There was a Jalen dunk on a curl because Porzingis was at the three-point line, bringing Anthony Davis away from the rim. Brown gets that curl. And it's something that I've seen at times. And I know, having Vando back full-time, it's not going to happen with Russell. I think Rui's better against bigger bodies than he would be somebody, because Rui's just so big. LeBron's probably playing the worst defense of his career, which is to be expected. I don't even know that I'm really knocking him for it. But there are just times where good perimeter players make the Lakers look slow defensively. It's just something that I notice, even though, some of the overall defensive numbers are really good. So I don't know if that was on LeBron on that one, on the wide open Drew three. We mentioned the Jalen dunk. You had Taurean Prince hit the 2 threes. He was 5 of 7. He kind of kept them in it. There was a Reeves three that made it 83-79. There was another play in transition where Drew Holiday ran past everybody, but he saw LeBron sizing him up for a block from the other side at the rim, so he kicked it back out. That led to a Jalen miss, but then follow up, he scored. And then at 83-79, after that Reeves three, D'Angelo Russell comes in to save the day. I understand the NBA rotations. Watch this game a long time. You're like, okay, we sub you out at this time and we put you in, okay? I don't know that in that moment, D'Angelo Russell is the guy you want coming in. Everybody knows I'm not a fan. We've been over this. But it's in that moment where you'd almost like to see a coach go, I think my team needs something else, and it's not him. So Russell comes in. He has 2 possessions that are back-to-back where no one else touches the basketball. To be fair, he made the first shot. The second one, he had a Hauser. Thought he was going to get past him. Didn't, just like everybody else in the league does, and then bricked it. He then defensively had a play where he completely loses Hauser, like doesn't even notice him. He's guarding no one. When you are guarding no one in an NBA game, that should be the first alarm. Like, who am I guarding? Like, I don't know. I'm just going to hang out here. Hauser burns him. D'Angelo Russell then pretends he's super frustrated with it. Horford off a made free throw. No one gets on him, and Horford hits a three. I think it might have been Rui's guy, but then Anthony Davis and D'Angelo Russell, the audacity to do the palms of the sky thing, being like, hey, what are we doing here? What are you doing? You're doing the same thing over and over again. And then my favorite one might have been D'Angelo Russell back on D. Derek White cuts and gets behind Russell and gives him like a little shake, and Russell's kind of turning around, pretending he kind of like, I guess, pretending that he's showing he's giving some sort of defensive awareness because he's watching the ball. And what White did is he kind of like a receiver, like ran the route like he was cutting it inside towards the paint and then just flares out to the corner. Russell doesn't even notice it, turns back the other way like, oh, hey, maybe I should catch up to him. And then White hits a wide open three, 95-82 at that point. There's a little bit of a press to get it under 10 again there. The good news, Lakers fans, is it's fixable. All the stuff I just said is really easy. The problem is you're bringing in a player in that moment that's never wanted to fix it, ever. And you brought him in at 83-79. I know what the plan is, the substitution pattern. They're rigid in the NBA. And I'm not even saying that they shouldn't be, because I think players need to kind of know, like, hey, this is when you're coming in. This is that moment. But there should be some freedom from a coach to see how a game is playing and go, you know what? I don't need a guy who makes even worse mistakes than all the mistakes that we're making right now in the third quarter to come in.